Well, essentially, you now have the Democratic Unionist Party, who the Tories are lavishing direct government investment onto, so as they can prop them up in power, so as the Tories can continue their policy of shrinking, stagnating and cutting the British economy. I mean, if you look at what's happened with Tory economics, we've seen a shrinking, stagnating economy built on eye-watering levels of private debt. I mean, only yesterday the Bank of England was saying that banks had to recapitalise because of the sheer amount of personal debt that people are now holding. That's what the economy's been built on. Prices are growing faster than wages, and this means that the consumers will rein in their spending, and that will see the economy suffer even further. So what Jeremy Corbyn is proposing is that we start paying our public sector workers what they deserve, a fair wage for the work that they do. I mean, in the light of the terror attacks that we've seen recently, in the Grenfell Tower disaster, firefighters were the first in the queue walking to danger. Police officers were the first in the queue running towards danger, but they seem to be last in the queue when it comes to getting fair paying conditions.
Is this an attempt to make political capital out of the Grenfell firefighters?
No, what it is it's a refocus on the fact that this Tory government has asked our nurses, our police, our doctors, our firefighters, our treasured public servants to bear the burden of austerity, while their policies are about taking wealth from the many, taking it out of our pockets and giving it to the wealthiest 1% in society.
How would you pay for it?
Well, there's a number of ways you can pay for it. One is to start asking the very top, the wealthiest people who've done very well since the crisis, to start paying their fair share. But I was speaking to the journalist Paul Gosling earlier today, and one word is key to unlocking the potential of the UK, and that's productivity. And if you look at UK productivity under the Tories, it's still lagging at pre-crisis levels. In fact, Italy outperforms the UK on productivity. And the UK is actually the worst performing economy among the G7. So how do you boost productivity? You boost it by direct government investment in infrastructure and skills.
And that comes from taxation, but more borrowing, does it?
Yes, I mean, at the minute, borrowing...
So you max out the credit card?
Not quite, no, because borrowing at the minute is effectively at zero cost. Interest rates are so low. And no government has ever functioned on no deficit. Right. It's ludicrous, insane economics. It's a myth that the Tories have peddled since 2010 on the deficit, and it needs to start. We need to start dispelling that.
There
myth.
You go, Henry Hill. It's as simple as that.
The obvious initial problem is the fact that interest rates are low now, but they aren't low forever. So if we heap on debt now, we will then be on the hook for it later on. And of course, if the government starts borrowing recklessly, that will erode lender confidence and interest rates will go up. The reason actually the UK has low productivity is because thanks to Gordon Brown's tax credit system, the British government subsidises low pay in the private sector, which means that you end up with employers overhiring, taking on too many people instead of investing in plants, capital, and improving productivity. But the problem with a public sector pay cap and lifting that is the fact that in the long term, our public services are currently unsustainable. And until we can have a bigger, more wholesale look at structural reform that will put them onto a stable basis in the long term, we need to hold down costs. And fundamentally, wages and other revenue expenditures are the easiest and most immediate way that you can hold down ballooning costs while you try and find a longer-term solution.
Hence the pay freeze.
Utter nonsense.
Sorry?
I mean, there's one public servant who's doing very well at the minute, and that's the Queen Elizabeth and the royal family, who have got a £6 million pay rise out of this government. You're able to find £1 billion as a bung to the DUP, which means you clearly believe that austerity is wrong for Northern Ireland but right for the rest of the UK. So the Tories need to make up their mind on that.
All right.
We've been subjected to Angela Ledsam's idea of patriotism, which clearly doesn't correspond to her tax affairs, because, you know, is she patriotic to where she has her offshore accounts?
I've no idea what she does with her accounts, but I know you've unleashed every caller in the country now because you mentioned the Queen. So 03030 80 55 55. We'll go first to Keith in Lisburn. Hi, Keith.
Good afternoon, William.
Good afternoon, sir.
And how are you today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Well, I'm on right to that. Mr. Hill, we'll call him. I don't
Henry Hill.
Henry Hill. Well, basically is what he's saying about, you know, that you can't undo the public freeze.
Yes.
That is ridiculous. As my comrade there, Phil Kelly, stated, as it says, without your nurses, without your fire service and your ambulance service, and, you know, especially with all the disasters we had lately, we owe a whole debt of gratitude. I've been on the Earth Strike rallies with the NSUWT, who've been fighting with the now defunct executive in Northern Ireland, asking for a 1% pay rise, while the likes of Peter Weir and all were giving themselves 11% pay rise. If the MPs and all stop giving themselves a pay rise, and the people like Miss Philip Greens and the Googles and all pay their fair share of tax, I think you would adequately find you could be able to pay your nurses, your doctors the fair wage they deserve.
All right, Keith.
They get overworked and they're underpaid.
Got it. Thank you very much, Keith. Stuart's there too in Clogher. Hey, Stuart.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Listen, I just think that obviously in circumstances where our fire service and our ambulance and the police to an extent as well are, they're under pressure, especially our nurses. I watched the programme there a fortnight ago, and it's happening in most hospitals where people are laying in hospital bed. They're laying in trolleys in wards, and you've got doctors coming down to them, and one of the consultants will say, we need to treat the most vulnerable first, the sickest. It's a pretty lame excuse. I know we have to find a way of paying for these things.
Isn't that what we always do? Triage in the health care system?
And I think it's a pretty lame argument. You've got our doctors and you've got our nurses, especially the nurses who do a fantastic job, from hospitals to Marie Curie to all different types. Our fire service and our ambulance service, for instance, they're going out to some of the most horrific accidents and things that anyone wouldn't.
No question, Stuart. Everybody values nurses and doctors and firefighters and the police. We need them. We need emergency services.
No doubt there.
But would you lift the 1% pay freeze completely? Would you lift that cap?
I said to your researcher that I would willingly pay extra.
You'd pay extra to fund that.
And I'm not one of these fat cats that they talk about, but I'd be willing to give.
But would you not be concerned that, and this is the point Henry Hill made a minute or two ago, would you not be concerned that there is a danger of wage inflation? There's a danger that down the road we're all going to pay the price in terms of interest rates and everything else if we let public sector wages skyrocket or increase further.
That's a counter argument. I suppose that's the whole idea of the discussion, isn't it?
Is that a risk you'd be prepared to take?
The way things have been going this last while and protection of your family in other countries, I suppose it would be, William, and that's probably just speaking from the heart, really.
Stuart, thank you very much. Joe's there too. Joe is in South Belfast. Hi, Joe.
Hi, William. William, who's the other guy other than Henry Hill there?
Phil Kelly.
Who?
Phil Kelly, Comrade Phil Kelly.
Yeah, Phil Kelly. Do you know what the problem that Henry Hill has with somebody like Phil Kelly is? Because he talks about the top 1%, and nobody likes to talk about that. And I really commend, because see, what Phil says, near enough word for word, is what I think. I really commend him. Henry Hill defends 10% pay raises for MPs, 8% increase for the Queen. If you were to... This is it in a nutshell, right? There is no need for austerity, right? Absolutely. It's been a fallacy. It's been an absolute fallacy. Because the corporations are getting away with paying what they want to pay to the government, not what they should be paying. And the top 1%, the likes of the Philip Greens and others, and a lot of the people connected to the Tory party, who have, by the way, 80 MPs that are landlords, that hasn't really been highlighted as well. So maybe that should be brought up in a future conversation.
All right, Joe, thank you very much. I don't know how much of that you do argue for Henry Hill in terms of pay rises for MPs, because you didn't state that in this conversation. But on the bigger question of austerity, do you believe the government's austerity project has worked at this point?
Well, the government has shrunk from austerity. Every time George Osborne encountered a political difficulty, he pushed back his horizons and he found more money for this and that. And I think the party has really suffered for that in this general election. Because, of course, if the Tories don't look like they're taking austerity seriously, why should the voters?
Yeah.
But, I think it's important to point out there's a lot of these issues that people are raising in order to justify lifting the 1% pay cap are very, very small beer. I mean, the money going to the monarchy, £6 million, that's actually as a result of a huge increase in profits from the Crown Estate, 3/4 of which have gone to the public purse and are going to be spent by the government. But a 1% pay rise, lifting the 1% pay cap is a vast undertaking.
Well, hang
and
on.
It actually
We've only got 40 seconds left. I want to give Phil some response. But incidentally, Oliver Letwin, you may have heard today on the Today programme, Oliver Letwin, the Tory MP Oliver Letwin, made the argument for a slight increase in taxes to fund some of this.
Look, the Tories are borrowing more money than ever to put it in the hands of financial institutions. Let's put that money into the real world economy. We don't need hedge fund managers. We need firefighters, teachers and police.
Don't you need hedge fund managers too?
Look, we've had wealth redistribution to the top 1%. Let's have some money fairly redistributed to the 99%, so as the social majority enjoy the wealth created by this nation.
Phil Kelly, Henry Hill, thanks very much to both of you. Gosh, we got through a lot there, didn't we? A lot of economics in about 20 minutes.